Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving into week 8. And as we move into week 8, I would like to point out a few things that will help you in wrapping up your final work. Remember, your final project is due next week. I would like to see all of you put that final project together and do it early. And if you have questions once it's assembled, we can look at it together. I would also state that when you're assembling your final project and you finally submit it, don't freak out at the match score on SafeAssign, because it is assumed that when you scaffold and put all of your work together into one submission, that SafeAssign will pick up the previous material and count that towards a match. And the way you will be able to see how high your match is on the material that's not part of your original submissions, is you can look at the various color-coded aspects of SafeAssign to determine what your match is there. What we're looking for in your final project is a culmination of each of those various areas that you've prepared your milestones on. Of course, this will be a copy and paste project, and then once you copy and paste, it is up to you to go through that final project and determine which areas are duplicative or repetitive, and make sure that you remove those duplicative and repetitive sections and make sure that they only appear in the most appropriate section. So if you have an overview of your organization, for example, make sure it only appears in one spot rather than in every single submission that you have made thus far. And of course, your final project is a culmination with recommendations based upon all the previous analysis and suggestions you've made in your previous work. So when we move into week 8, you have 2 assignments for this week. Those 2 assignments are a discussion question, and the discussion question revolves around the review of a post-acute care facility. You are specifically asked to use one of the 4 identified in the textbook. So your prompt is, you are a healthcare administrator and you've been tasked with the job of making improvements to one of the 4 PACs mentioned in the textbook and this week's reading. One consideration to keep in mind when reviewing a post-acute care facility is high quality patient care can be delivered at a cost appropriate to the condition and needs of your patients. In your initial post, select one of the 4 PACs described in the chapter. How does this PAC you chose address the consideration of balancing high quality of care with affordability for the patient? And then you're to respond to one of your classmates and explain if their analysis would be applicable to the other PACs that are considered in this week's chapter. Then your second assignment is going to relate to the CMS website. You will note in the handwritten notes I have identified for you at the lower right hand corner of that web page where you will find the 2 most applicable areas to look into relative to your organizations. I suggest you go beyond just those 2 and read the various aspects that are identified for you. Once you've reviewed the CMS website and you've looked for additional support that you can use as a healthcare administrator to make recommendations in your final project, you are asked to create a journal entry identifying what questions you still have regarding your final project and what areas or concerns in the project you feel that you have a firm grip on at this particular point. Now, I would suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that when you review those rubrics and it says proficient, if you hit proficient in each category, that will essentially add up to 90 or an A- in most instances. To go to that higher level, you have to do the higher level of performance, and you must incorporate all of those aspects stated for the exemplary to go to the higher level. It says 2 to 3 paragraphs. Many of you will not be able to write a Gettysburg Address and answer all the questions in the prompt and provide all the material to be exemplary. I will not hit you if you are above that 2 or 3 paragraph requirement. You will be awarded extra points towards that exemplary for all of the extra information that you provide and identified in the rubric. This week we are concentrating on post-acute care facilities. The major areas that are covered this week are long-term care hospitals, inpatient rehabilitation facilities, skilled nursing facilities, sometimes called a SNF, and home health care agencies. The various models of deliveries will have different policies and requirements for payment. They will have different methods of determining what prospective payment you will receive. You will note in your reading that the prospective payment systems have morphed for all of these facilities over the recent years to in fact relate to and provide a formula for determining payment based on the needs of the patients, the quality of care, the facilities themselves. The Medicare Payment Advisory Commission in 2014 issued a final report and makes recommendations relative to these facilities. The prospective payment system for the long-term care or post-acute care facilities and home health care and rehabilitation is based on a very similar system as used in the outpatient setting. We actually, instead of the RVU, we use the RUG, which is a resource utilization group, and from there we make the geographic price index changes. We make changes based upon the level of ADL of a patient, and ADL simply refers to activities of daily living. These are determined by how much of daily living activity a particular patient can perform for him or herself, and then it determines from there whether or not the patient requires a higher level of assistance from a care provider. And this all, of course, is important in determining what rate of reimbursement. Now, I will note it's not fully discussed in your textbook, but the history of the case mix reimbursement for these facilities is a very important aspect. Previous to the prospective payment service and the reforms to long-term care facilities in the 90s, long-term care facilities would basically shop for their patients, and it was to their benefit to get patients of lower levels of ADLs because they would maximize the amount they received in reimbursement. When we look at the indexes and those things that affect the pricing of long-term care and post-acute care, one thing you must keep in mind when we look at this particular arena is the fact that one thing will not change for those inpatient settings, and that is the hotel charge. That pretty much will be standardized, what you charge for linens and the requirements of the patients while they are in your particular facility. We are going to also look at the aspect of healthcare, particularly identified in impact in this chapter, on how it affects the patients. The impact initiative, the Improving Medicare Post-Acute Care Transformation Act, was passed in 2014. This particular act requires substantial reporting requirements and a standardizing of quality assessment and resource use measures. These are all to be reported through minimum data sets. The minimum data set is a reporting requirement where the patient's facility reports the screening and assessment tool used to evaluate the ADLs of their residents, or what is now referred to as the functional capability, and it is required of Medicare, Medicaid certified nursing homes. We also have the Inpatient Rehabilitation Facility Patient Assessment Instrument, referred to the IRF-PAI. This particular instrument is used to measure data on fee-for-service patients requiring inpatient rehabilitation services based on physical, cognitive, functional, and psychosocial factors. The reporting requirements for home health care are found in the OASIS, which is the Outcome Assessment Information Set. OASIS is used to measure patient risk factors and outcomes Reporting is required when the patient comes into and during a 60-day period of care, and then when they are discharged from home health care agency care. One of the things that is not mentioned in the reading for this week that I think is worth bringing up is JACO, the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations. This is one of the few instances where I think it would be fun to be in a class and actually have a raising of hands of who has been involved in JACO and ask those students to share their experiences. JACO has very strict reporting and very strict accreditation requirements. A JACO site visit is very extensive, looks at all aspects within your organization relative to care. In order to participate in CMS, your facility must be JACO accredited. The states also have very similar aspects of accrediting and certifying healthcare facilities for Medicaid. Medicaid is normally available for those who are financially indigent with little or limited resources at their end of their lives.